Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to join you. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land and to elders past, present and emerging. To my good friend most of the time, except when she says Labor gets it right all the time. We know that's not right. And I'm about to tell you why. But to Deb O'Neill, to Susan Carter, John Metcalf, of course the wonderful Vanessa Cheng, Kojo Akamia, Michelle Pearce, Mark Stein, Ted Boyce, Graham Irwin, and the wonderful John Anderson. I haven't seen John yet. Is he here? He's coming. I'm going to acknowledge him in absentia. He is a wonderful man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, faith-based education matters, and the Coalition has faith in your future. Genuine faith, demonstrated by actions, not just words. We back you, we believe in you, we have fought for your future. We have fought for your principals and teachers and administrators. We have fought for the right of parents to choose the best education for their children. We have fought for your values, and we won't stop. In contrast to the uncertainty and threats to your viability you have endured for the past 3 years under the Albanese government, the Coalition has your back. We will not let you down. We are on the precipice of a federal election. Today, if elected, I reaffirm that your future is bright under a Dutton government. Congratulations to the Australian Association of Christian Schools under Vanessa Cheng's leadership. You are doing very important work to protect and promote Christian education in Australia throughout your 91 member schools. Thank you for advocating, empowering and strengthening. I've had the opportunity to meet many of you over the past 2 years and visit some of your schools. I am inspired by your commitment and dedication to young Australians through the transformational power of education. Non-government schools educate 37% of Australia's 4.1 million students. These include low-fee and special assistance schools and those in remote communities serving Indigenous children where no other schooling is available. Over the past 5 years to 2024, total student enrolments increased by 4.6%. Independent schools recorded the largest increase of 18.5%, much of that, of course, in faith-based schools. Schools characterised by low fees, strong academic results, active parental engagement, and the practicing of Christian faith. Parents are voting with their feet. I've just returned from a wonderful trip to the Northern Territory where I met with several principals from the Christian Education National Network of Schools, of which many of you are members. I visited a number of schools in Alice Springs and Darwin, seeing firsthand the important role that boarding schools play in educating Indigenous children and teenagers from remote communities. I witnessed the work of Teach for Australia associates who are changing lives in schools around the country where disadvantaged is deeply embedded. The challenges are immense. Every child, no matter where they live in our great country, has a right to reach his or her best potential. I know many of you here are leading innovative approaches to shifting the dial for Indigenous participation and outcomes. Thank you so much. If we are elected, we will work with the school systems and with the states and territories to tackle and lift Indigenous outcomes in schools, founded on getting back to basics, explicit instruction, evidence-based teaching, prioritising reading, writing, maths and science. Like the Coalition under the leadership of Peter Dutton, I'm delighted the new Country Liberals Minister for Education and Training, Joe Hersey, is on a mission to deliver explicit instruction in every classroom in the Northern Territory, because we all know that is what works. It has been an honour to stand shoulder to shoulder with Christian schools, particularly at your Faith in the Future rallies. As I said at your Melbourne rally, attended by more than 1,000 people, you raised your voice to the ceiling, to the skies, to the heavens, and with our support forced the government to withdraw its secret religious discrimination bills. These were proposed laws which actively discriminated against all faith-based schools, Christian, Jewish, Islamic. Your very viability was under threat. In contrast to Labor and the Greens, we understand that hiring and firing staff in accordance with your tenets and beliefs is fundamental to your very existence. Building a community of faith lies at the very heart of the success of faith-based schools. This attack on your very existence should come as no surprise, however. The Albanese government, the most extreme left-wing government in living memory, has not had your back. Consider also the Commonwealth Teaching Scholarships Program, which is only open to teachers entering government schools, even though Labor's teacher shortage crisis is impacting every school system, particularly in regional, rural and remote Australia. Labor's Productivity Commission report, Future Foundations for Giving, recommended no future at all for school building and library funds at a cost to independent and Catholic schools of a shocking $3 billion a year, a reckless proposal only ruled out after we vowed to fight this every step of the way. The not-so-subtle changes to the school chaplaincy program, now the National Student Wellbeing Program, send the message the Albanese government does not value faith-based activities. The non-government sector was also excluded from any meaningful consultation over the government's 10-year school funding and reform agreements. There is nothing better or fairer about that. The Northern Territory's 43 non-government schools, for instance, were blindsided by a deal between federal and Northern Territory Labor, which means there is no uplift in funding from 15 to 20% of the Schooling Resource Standard until 2029. While the Coalition has made clear we will match all school funding agreements dollar for dollar, there is so much that we do not know because Education Minister Jason Clare has refused to disclose these agreements in breach of Senate orders to do so. Under the current Labor government, our education system is in serious decline. 1 in 3 children is not meeting basic proficiency levels in reading, writing and maths under NAPLAN. The average Year 10 student is 1 year behind in his or her learning compared to 2 decades ago. In 2006, according to the Programme for International Student Assessment, or PISA, Australia ranked 6th in reading and science and 8th in maths. We are now well out of the top 10, sitting at 10th for science, 12th for reading and 16th for maths. Year 12 attainment rates have declined from 82% in 2019 to 78.7% last year. Attendance rates are dismal. The proportion of students attending school more than 90% of the time in government schools is down to an alarming 56%, almost 20 percentage points lower than a decade ago. Students in non-government schools fare much better at 66%, but still far lower than a decade ago, which was 81.5%. These are alarming statistics and urgent action is required. The new 10-year school funding and reform agreements presented the opportunity to drive significant reforms to reverse these declining standards and to provide much greater support for teachers, but not nearly enough has been delivered. These agreements do include several important measures such as an early years numeracy check. But overall, the agreements are inadequate. There are plenty of motherhood statements, but few specific obligations and only scant references to evidence-based teaching and actually what needs to change in the classroom. So we think this is a real missed opportunity. And as you might know, of course, the government school funding war continues with Queensland. There is no agreement between the Commonwealth and Queensland, and that is impacting on more than 570,000 students in government schools. Given Australia has some of the world's most unruliest classrooms, we are also concerned about deteriorating classroom behaviour and even violence, despite many sound recommendations by the Coalition Senate inquiry into classroom disruption. There has been no action on the overcrowded national curriculum, made up of some 3,000 pages. How you're expected to navigate that, I do not know. Primary principals from every sector are saying to us, in fact, it was the very first meeting I had as the Shadow Education Minister, the curriculum is impossible to teach. Well, I can assure you we are listening, and we are noting with a lot of concern also the very low levels of proficiency in civics and citizenship. We cannot expect future generations to protect and uphold democracy if they do not understand it. Many of these statistics, of course, relate to the 9,600 Australian schools as a whole, and I want to emphasise they don't reflect the excellent practice and exceptional improvements in so many schools in this country, including in Christian schools. The Coalition is very interested in ways to better back teacher training through excellence at our universities and through innovative training models, and I know many of you are very focused on this also. We really want to harness what you do well and see what you can do in terms of better embedding best practice teacher training in our universities. When graduates enter your classrooms, our expectations will be that they've received the very highest quality tertiary foundations. So, in a nutshell, the Coalition is determined to get back to basics in our schools by prioritising reading, writing, maths and science. We want to work with you to give teachers the support that they need to adopt evidence-based teaching practices backed by high-quality curriculum materials and safe and orderly classrooms overwhelmingly focused on learning. We are listening to the experts, including the highly regarded Australian Education Research Organisation, about the importance of a knowledge-rich curriculum, which clearly and coherently identifies the core learning outcomes for each subject in each year level. Unlike the government on this very important issue, we will not sit on our hands. The teaching of Indigenous history and culture is crucial, but embedding the cross-curriculum priorities in every subject, Indigenous history and culture, Asia and sustainability, is, we believe, more about activism than what's in the best interests of students and teachers. So for the sake of young Australians and for the future prosperity of our nation, we must be a top 10 education nation, and explicit instruction on that mission, of course, as we recognise, is key. I know many of you are leading the charge in evidence-based teaching. Your results speak for themselves, and I salute you. So right now, our nation is at a crossroad. The threat of a Labor, Greens, Teals, or as they've been called, the Gucci Greens, minority government is real. This, we say, would pose a significant threat to our country, including to non-government schools. The Greens have made it clear that in exchange for supporting Labor to form government, they would demand $10 billion to abolish so-called public school fees and provide a further $2.7 billion to top up infrastructure at public schools, which has been a long-standing state and territory government responsibility. Disgracefully, the Greens spokesperson for schooling has called the non-government school system a leech on the public system and said every proportional increase in private school enrolments is a public policy failure. We have seen the Albanese government doing deals with the Greens throughout this term of Parliament, and just imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if the Greens got their hands on the levers of power, perhaps even around the cabinet table, which is all part of their plan. None of this bears contemplating, and needless to say, we cannot let this happen. I just want to conclude by saying I'm incredibly proud of the Coalition's record in education, which includes a nearly doubling annual school funding when we were in government, despite what you might hear from teacher unions and the like, and members of the government, from $13 billion in 2013 to $25.3 billion in 2022. We're very proud of many initiatives that we delivered, of course, including Aero and the way that we fought for the science of learning, especially when it comes to embedding phonics in the curriculum. We also shone a very important light on teacher training through the Quality Initial Teacher Education Review, sounded the alarm bells that much needs to be done to improve teacher training. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for all that you do for your school communities. The Coalition is ready to work with you and your school systems, and we ask for your support as we head into this election. Together we can get our country back on track. Thank you.